going to just jump right into it. I have a set of questions. I did share them with the panelists, and they're kind of broad, but they're really geared towards, just trying to get some sort of idea of your experience in the culture.
I was fortunate enough to see it firsthand, and remember being at a very young, impressionable age and walking into a subway train that's just, graffiti's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You'd have to, watch your seat. You're sitting on something. Mm-hmm. And I remember distinctly moments where, like, you would get into a train and you would be on the ground and the train would be dark, and then when you would come out of the tunnel into the daylight, the light would shine through the windows, but the windows would be covered in graffiti, so you would get colored light reflecting into the train, which I always remember distinctly as a kid, thinking that was cool. But I had cousins that were doing it very early on. I was introduced to that in that form, and I was telling the story before. When I was young, I was very thin, and an uncle of mine used to make fun of me, and he would say, "You look like that green bean," in Spanish, ejote. Mm-hmm. "You look like that green bean from TV." And he was referencing Gumby because he thought Gumby was a green bean. So
that's awesome.
I took that moniker and made it my own, and I was Gumby, and I wrote Gumby for many years. And I would say in the early 90s, I figured I would shed that childhood name and come up with something that was a little more practical and something I could get up quicker, and I enjoyed doing the letters. So it was random. There was no thought put into it. It was just Da.
Okay.
And yeah.
You like the letters?
Yeah, and I wrote Da 1. Mm-hmm. People would misunderstand that and think I meant I'm the one.
The one.
But that's not where it came from.
Okay. And you were Gumby when you came down to Maryland, DC?
No, actually, I probably somewhere in there I switched it up.
Okay.
It was kind of like a blur as to when RK and Gumby took over.
Sure. Okay. So, let's move on a little bit. What years were you most active? I'm gonna pitch this over to Mes to get us started. What would you count as your most active years writing?
I would say late 80s to 92, maybe? Yeah.
Okay.
91, 92.
So we're talking like a 5-year span, 6-year span?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And then in that time, it's all about graffiti.
Yeah.
I mean, it has...
There was a lot of that.
It has, I mean, I know for myself personally, like, it took over my life for 5 or 6 years, like, where I just couldn't really think of anything else besides, like, how to be a better graffiti writer.
Yeah, it's very engaging. The adrenaline of it, it's a sport. Mm-hmm. In fact, by the time I got to high school, I think I quit the sports that I was doing because this was just, I could get my calisthenics in.
Right.
And I had to climb up things, so...
You were walking probably crazy amounts of hours.
Yeah. So, getting chased.
So late 80s into early 90s DC put you in a very pivotal time in the city, and we'll touch back on that in a little bit, but just from the perspective of you're coming from Arlington, Virginia, and now you're spending like lots and lots of time in DC, what was that like for you? You know what I'm saying? Was it an easy transition or easy fit? Like you just found a groove and you were able to be in it?
The answer is yes. I did. I would come to DC a lot to go to punk rock shows, and that, and also skateboard. Mm-hmm. So those two things had me in the city a lot, and get a lot of large influx of people, especially from New York in the punk rock scene. So guys would come down and they'd tag the bathroom, and you'd just be like, what? That's amazing. Study it every week when you go to the club, and copy it, and then hope that they come back, and then hope that you have a black book ready to, talk to them and maybe have them do an outline in your book. And it just built on from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Randy, how about yourself? Most active years, like the years that you were spending the most time writing in graffiti.
I'd say 84, 85.
84, 85. Stone cold, just like one year, like going ham.
In a sense, like when you said with sport, it was like competitive.
Mm-hmm.
When I see everybody, I used to just write.
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere I used to go, I keep a pen, not a pen, but a marker. And I used to be on buses, subways, and everywhere I go, like I say, even in bathrooms.
Mm-hmm.
Write my name on the wall, mirrors, everywhere. And it got competitive.
Was it a similar thing where you would see other people's names written up and you'd be like, oh, I like that, or?
Yeah, cause one time you asked about what is best, what one of the good spots.
Mm-hmm.
The bridge come across North Capitol.
Mm-hmm.
Lisa done beat me to the bridge. I never thought about the bridge, but when Lisa hit the bridge, and I was like, damn.
And she did that with spray paint, right?
Spray paint.
And were you messing around with the spray paint before that?
Yes, but not a whole lot.
Okay.
But still, when she hit the bridge, I was like, damn it. So when
Okay.
she hit the bridge, we had to hit the bridge.
Yeah, I remember.
But she beat me to it. We had to hit the bridge.
But that was kind of like the switch for you, right? Like you were like, okay, I'm gonna do it. Is that in the same time frame?
No, it was the same time frame. I was painting anyway,
Mm-hmm.
but then I just never thought about the bridge. And because we all the X-bus, everybody, the bus used to come across the bridge. Because now there's a lot more bus routes, but the bridge was a spot.
The X2 bus, yeah.
Yeah, the bridge was a spot.
And Da, how about you?
I would say I was most active late, like 87 to like 90. I mean, I kind of really never like left completely. I had like several hiatuses.
Mm-hmm.
But like in DC, I started out doing a lot of tagging on buses. That was like primarily what I started out doing in the area. Eventually, in the early 90s, I ended up meeting different writers in the area. And through that, the network expanded. And then we started to get more familiar with each other, hence painting with each other, getting walls together. So, the early 90s were probably like the heyday for me in regards to, putting in the most work.
Okay. And just as a side note, so you guys are all kind of operating roughly at around the same time. You may come a little bit later after Randy is kind of done, but you two were in the same, areas, so to speak. Now, do you remember seeing Randy out?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
yeah.
was that like what was that like? I mean, you knew other graffiti writers at the time, or the graffiti writers maybe from around your area?
Starting to. No, there weren't any graffiti writers in my neck of the woods.
Okay.
I had to find them through networks and kind of hunt them down.
Mm-hmm.
And
But-
pen pal and stuff like that.
Okay.
But I remember seeing Randy up and was like, that's a full-fledged logo.
Mm.
And I was impressed.
Yeah. I mean, it stands out from most of the other writers of the time and of the, I guess, of that community, you know what I'm saying, because you not only, created, something that had something to do with the band iconography for Rare Essence, but then also you put a dimension on it. And so it stood out from the other names. The only other person I can really think of, maybe one or two people, but like Cool Calm Chuck, and then like Fila Frank had the Fila logo, with his name. But I'm not sure if you ever saw that tag. I've seen it a few times, but definitely the Cool Calm Chuck with like
I
the
know
big
Chuck.
letter C.
I know
And you knew Chuck?
Yeah, Chuck. Yeah. I was trying to catch up with Chuck. Can't nobody know. I was trying to catch up with Chuck. Can't find him.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And so what? I mean, was there something that made you think, all right, I need to stand out. I want to do something that's going to look a little bit different. Was that a conscious thought for you?
Yeah. Because mostly because when I looked at it, when Rare Essence made their symbol, they had two different symbols. They had one with the wings, and I couldn't draw the wings properly. But when it came with like the block one, I was like, okay, I can hit that. Then the moment I was like, I was just going to use it without the E, and I was like, hey, so what is this? I'm going to keep the E with it.
Yeah.
Because that was my favorite band at the time anyway, so I kept the E with it, and I was prolific with it.
Right.
You know, I know I wrote more than everybody because I kept a magic marker everywhere. Even if we didn't have magic marker, we'd go in the drugstore and go steal magic markers. And
Go rack up?
Almost that.
Did you ever meet the band? Any of the folks in the
Yeah,
band?
I know Funk.
Okay.
I know Funk, one of my mans, because one of my friends was working a light for him, and he introduced him to me one time and everything like
Okay.
that. You know, in the Roger documentary, White Boy said that I knew somebody introduced me to him. That never happened.
You got introduced to jazz funk.
I know Funk.
Okay.
White Boy wouldn't know me if I walked past the street. That was not true.
Did Funk show love, or like when
Oh
you
yeah,
met?
me and
He
Funk.
recognized.
Oh exactly, me and Funk cool.
Yeah.
To this day, me and Funk cool.
That's beautiful. That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
But nah. That never. The way that happened, the way he explained to Roger, that was fabrication.
Okay.
And
Yeah, we-
maybe he mixed me up with somebody else, but no.
Right. Well, maybe one of them things, like I used to meet people all the time that told me that they were cool disco Dan. The funny thing is I already knew Dan at the time, so like anytime somebody would say that, I'd be like, all right, man. Cool. You know, but it happened a number of times. Like it was really wild. Like the people just claimed to be somebody else, but maybe that was the case.
Well, one time I had a hat. I had my name on a hat. I had like with the paint magic mark. I had my name on a hat, and a friend of mine, he wanted to wear my hat, and he told people he was me. And then the girlfriend, I said, "Man, let him wear your hat, you lying." So, but I ain't.
Word. So you actually had someone come after you and add the junior to the name.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't really like that, but you know he was cool. So, because back then, if somebody would do something like that, you would scratch their name out,
Right.
and put your name right by it,
Right.
and let it be known. Yeah, you know. Yeah, but he was cool, so I
let it be.
I let it go.
Okay. I think we might have touched on this a little bit, but just to hit back. You know, there are all sorts of moments that can happen. I know for me, you know, someone told me that there was a copy of what's the book? The Wild
Spray can art
Spray Can Art.
or wild style.
Yeah, Spray Can. It's Spray Can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Someone told me there was a copy of Spray Can Art
Subway
at
art.
the Hydesville Library. And Subway Art. I'm sorry. Subway Art. Apologies. Someone told me there was a copy of Subway Art at the library down the street from the school. And I literally left school that day and went right to the library, marched in, and promptly put that book in my book bag. It was a pivotal moment for me, though, because I know that after that day, I did nothing else for a few years but, go out and do graffiti, try to learn more, whatever have you. I think you kind of touched on this earlier with the documentary that you saw. But is there anything else that you can pinpoint as a big influence for you to write? Now, I know that you started writing graffiti at that point in time, but later it became very serious for you. And
Yeah.
is there a pivotal moment or something that you can touch on that really inspired you to step your game up, so to speak?
Spray can art definitely did. Subway art totally did. And I think I checked that out of the library to the point where I think the spine broke
Permanently.
and pages fell out. Favorite pages fell out. But then the book got returned. And then my mom was at a book fair and she's like, "Oh, I thought you'd be interested." She brought home Spray Can Art. I was like, "Oh yes, it's on."
Yeah.
You know, and you see guys like Bando and Mode 2 and you're just like, this is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I want to rise to that occasion.
Yeah.
So
Thing with that book too, it kind of took me, because when you see the early stuff out of New York, and you're like, okay, this is New York, but then when you see Spray Can Art, it shows you, well, this thing is spreading around the world.
yeah.
And what Spray Can Art's in '86, so you're really only talking about a 3 or 4 year period from the first major introduction, and then you're seeing these scenes pop up all over the world essentially, with some amazing artists like Mode 2. You know what I'm saying? Even at that time, was probably better than most people now.
Better than me.
Better than me. I know a little bit later you get a little bit more into skating and a little bit more into punk rock, but I remember you telling me that there was something, an advertisement or something you saw in one of the skateboard magazines that really like kind of lit your fire.
Yeah, it was a Powell Peralta Bones Brigade, and someone had, with paint pens, had written Bones in pretty standard like New York style graffiti. And I was skating. I think I was in like I think it was probably like 7th grade, may have been a little younger, and no, I was in junior high, so it was 7th grade, and I saw that because in 6th grade I was still breakdancing. 7th grade, saw that and was like, yo, I know that. And I skateboard. All right, worlds collide. Yo, I can draw on your skateboard. So I got a bunch of paint pens, drew on my buddies' skateboards. They're much better skaters than I was. So I was like, all right, cool. I'm still in the scene that I like. I'm giving something to it. I'm receiving a lot of joy from doing it. So I'm going to keep doing that. And at the time, I was transitioning from listening to a lot of hip hop to starting to listen to a lot more punk rock and hardcore music. And from there, I started doing flyers, and that from there, I could parse together new styles that I wanted to work on, and it was fun. Doing a lot of silk screens, so I was making shirts and taking classes about learning new media to work with, and it was fun.
And that was all kind of being fueled through your passion for graffiti, like, and just creating?
Yeah, I mean, it was yeah, I remember. I was taking a class at the Corcoran, and it was silk screening, and I did like a 4-color separation thing that said squid, and I guess that was a intermediary name that lasted about a week. But it was a horrible piece, but it had a character, had 3D, had bubble background and everything. Those were all different colors, and my registration was on, so I was happy technically.
Nice. That Bones Brigade advertisement comes up in a lot of people's origin stories. Particularly, like, obviously folks who were involved in skating, but Keir has literally the same story, that he saw that advertisement and like the next day he's drawing on his skateboard, and people started noticing him for having letters on his skateboard, and then other writers started to approach him. I think he said that's how he met Evade and a few other folks down at Freedom Plaza, was by having his name on his skateboard, and then people just kind of checking him out. But he got the idea from that advertisement. And so it's just, it's one of those cultural touch points where you can look at, certain sets in communities of graffiti writers and be like, okay, they draw an origin back to this thing. Obviously we all kind of go back to, to a certain extent, Subway Art and Style Wars, except for Randy, because you got involved in a different way. A lot of people talking about the age of graffiti as a culture and name writing as a culture, and we have these kind of touch points. We say like 69, 70, 71 for Philadelphia and New York. I happen to personally believe that it goes back even further than that. Those name writing, the name writing culture, and particularly the one that you got kind of involved in, which, like you said, is separate from go-go, even though we call it go-go graffiti. I'm saying it's separate from that because it existed, separately away from it. I think some people refer to them as soul names and certain things like that, where there's graffiti that's not necessarily definable within the style lexicon that as we have received it, it starts in New York with tags and goes on to the trains. We know that there are other places like in Los Angeles where the Cholo script has existed since at least the 20s, because it's documented in photographs, and that culture probably extends almost 80, 100 years earlier till the time we get to actually doing burners. Personal philosophy, I know there's not direct evidence connecting all of those things, but I have a theory, is my point, that all of these things are connected together. No matter what kind of entry point we have, it all goes back to a origin, those name writing cultures that existed, people writing on freight trains and things of that nature that existed even before we were doing burners. So now, I know, Randy, I think you've already answered this, and Da, I think you've already answered this, which is, why did you pick the name that you write now? And maybe, maybe we want to refresh, what I'm saying, the reason why you picked Da was?
It was more of like coming of age, maturity, trying to shed the childhood name and try to just recreate myself. I as far as a mature writer, Gumby just sounded too childlike to me at the time. I wanted something that was a little shorter, something that I could get up quick because I bombed a lot. I tagged, so I wanted something that I could just get up quick and keep going. But yeah, it's pretty much it, in regards to the name. I have aliases. Sometimes I'll switch it up. As an artist, sometimes you get, you want to keep yourself on the edge creatively, and sometimes writing the same 3 letters over and over and over again, you sometimes choose different aliases just to kind of keep it fresh and
Absolutely.
dip into the pool of different letters and play around with that.
And so when you picked it, necessarily didn't have a meaning for you then. Does it have a meaning for you now? I mean, it's an identity that you've kind of grown into over a couple of decades. So, does it mean something to you now?
No, I'm not going to try to be profound and say that it's this and that. I would try to rationalize and come up with some kind of acronym. But at the end of the day, no, it's Da.
What's funny, because when I heard Da, right, and then obviously, like, almost like when I heard Da, like, for some reason the word Bronx comes into my head, and it sounds like the Bronx, what I'm saying, like Da, the Bronx, what I'm saying, like, it made sense to me, what I'm saying, like, and it sounded super tough when I heard it. I was like, Da, what's Da? Okay.
It was never anything intentional. Like, sometimes people are like, what is that? What do you write? Duh? I'm like, nah, Da, like Ja, Rastafari, like, Da. Not that it's a deity or anything, it's
Right.
just Da.
Right. I got you. Randy, you mentioned obviously the love for Essence, what I'm saying, but you wanted to just write your name, right? So you kind of put these two things together, your name and Rare Essence, and I assume, what I'm saying, that there's, broadly, like, if you didn't like Rare Essence, you wouldn't be already Randy.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, like you were saying about aliases. And now I'm thinking, damn, I wish I should have made enough aliases back then.
Right.
Yeah, I should have.
I got like 4 names, dude.
Yeah, I'm mad I didn't do it.
You ain't need it.
Yeah,
everybody
but,
was already here.
But like then everybody's making little nicknames like Monster, Al Capone, and sometimes when TV shows come out, Mr. T. I had a friend of mine calls up Mr. D. So, but I didn't want to make no super tough image name that didn't fit me. That I like the Rare Essence. I took that in my initial. And I like, okay, I'm gonna run with that.
Anybody else jump out there like that with like a band name, like were there like Air Raid Abe or Junkyard James or anybody like that try to like follow up?
Not that I can really recall. Well, like sometimes when I used to write my name, sometimes I write some of my friend's name. So my best friend, even to this day, named Tom Tom. So sometimes I used to put his name Tom Tom. I used to put the Trouble Funk. I tried the Trouble Funk used to make that symbol.
Yeah.
But instead of making the F, I just put Tom with a circle and a lightning bolt.
Nice.
And sometimes I used to draw Chuck name.
Okay.
A lot of times I just do some of our friends, like we'd just put a whole roll call, about 20 names. And I write people's names and everything that I'm cool with.
And Chuck, you mean Cool Calm Chuck?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now, is Chuck older than you?
We were probably around the same age.
Probably around the same age. Okay. And you guys started roughly around the same time?
Yeah.
Okay.
We probably around the same.
Excellent. And MESK. Such an interesting sounding name,
It's all about the letters.
It's all about the letters.
I was writing Raze, R-A-Z-E, which I loved because it means destroy. And, you're skating, you want to destroy things. You're grinding stuff with your trucks. You're listening to hardcore music. It's all about destroy. You listen to Bad Brains, Destroy Babylon. You're like yes. But Z's suck. And R to A is just a tough combo too.
Okay.
Easy only saving grace on that one. And at that time I was, and after that I wrote Eros, E-R-O-S. I think I did a few pieces. Joker and I did a rooftop in Georgetown on top of some club right next to Whitehurst. So I did a few pieces with that, but that got old quick. O's are just tough. Drop that in the middle of the letter. So I was pen paling with Espo, and just the ES I was drawn to it, and K's are phenomenal, and you can't go wrong with M's. So
Sure.
and also I was straight edge, so the humor of writing MESK, like mescaline, because graffiti was so addictive to me. I was like, yeah, a little tongue in cheek.
Yeah. And we talked about that in one of our earlier conversations, and you just kind of like casually dropped that. Oh yeah, I was pen paling with Espo, and I'm like, what year was this? You know what I'm saying? You're talking about late 80s?
Late 80s.
Late
yeah.
80s.
I think
Yeah.
it was through, I think you were awake the whole time. A guy named Joe.
Yeah.
And he had On the Go, or I think he did. Well, nonetheless. So he, we pen paled with, I pen paled with Espo, Air from New York, the IGT guys. I don't know who it was. I don't think I was so lucky as to have FaZe writing me.
Right.
But someone from IGT was, responding to the money I sent by sending me IGTs. Power out in LA,
Yeah.
Can Control. And a guy named Upsky in Chicago.
Yeah.
He was doing a free magazine called It's Yours. That was like graffiti, poetry, spoken word, but actually written word. And ironically, I still am in touch with him. I was just talking to him the other day.
To Upsky?
Yeah.
Nice. Tell him I just brought some Bomb the Suburbs into the shop.
Great book.
It is. It is. The interesting part about that is that you're talking about even that one, just to jump back, Espo, aka Steve Powers, very well known artist, has his roots in graffiti writing. But just the concept of your pen paling with different graffiti artists from other cities, and it's really starting to create almost like a national network of like connected artists, sometimes connected crews, which really is at the cusp of graffiti writers actually documenting the culture themselves in publishing, right? So On the Go, we're talking about, and here in DC we had Flam, and there are others that fall into that category in various different cities. This is a good almost like, I guess, 20 years, I guess we would call it, from the early 70s graffiti stuff, and then we're about to get into the 90s, and graffiti writers are documenting and publishing themselves to a certain extent. We're not full-on books, you know what I'm saying, but Can Control was a real magazine, you know what I'm saying, by the time I got my hands on it. On the Go was full color by the time I got my hands on it, probably a few years later, but it's just a really important time, and the fact that you were having those conversations is super important, because people were realizing, oh, there's graffiti over in DC too. And
Yeah.
we were not really like well known for it, you know what I'm saying, at the time. People weren't really checking for us, so to speak, right?
No, I mean, they would come in, like Lee, and I think Pink was there as well. Did a piece behind the 930 Club.
She says she was not present.
Okay, well then it's Lee,
Yeah.
and he must have put up Pink.
Yeah. They were dating at the time, I think. Yeah.
Fair enough. So that was like, honestly, I would go out writing, and I would circle back, would pay homage.
Yeah.
If my tag got better, I'd want to put up a new version of it right there. And because you would see like bands coming in, and then they would hit it up, and so you would want to be like, okay, I'm just going to drop some seeds out there. I don't know if I'm ever going to be in touch with them, but I still want them to see it. And get all the go-go, I'm going to say go-go writers, because that at that time, that world was pretty foreign to me, but I would see all their different styles, whether it's just like stacked letters, or and then Seven was doing stuff on the red line that was catching my eye.
Okay. What was that like? Because you were invested in graffiti culture in that way, but then in your own city, there's this whole separate, like, writing culture that's happening, or community of writers, maybe. You know what I'm saying? Had you met Dan at that point?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, it took a while to meet Dan.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
You know, because it's just like, it was like we were doing our thing, and then it was like 50 to 70% of the graffiti was out there and had nothing to do with what we were doing.
Right.
And, you know, Dan was leading the way. He was just crushing it.
That would trip me out. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I was like, you know, I felt like I was invested, I was involved, and then there's dozens and dozens of other people that are participating in the same. I have no clue who they are. I mean, it reminds me of when I first rode the Red Line, and obviously you look at everything, and I don't know. You know, at 16, I know nobody. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, oh, I wonder who that is. I wonder who that is. You know, you make up all of these like stories in your head of who you think people might be just based off of their name, like Da. You know what I'm saying? Like, sounds like somebody's gonna punch me in my face. You know, like that's in my head.
It's a very real possibility.
It's a possibility. It's a possibility. Back maybe not today. Maybe in '89, I might have
Potentially.
caught the eye jammy, you know. Yeah, basically. That 930 Club alleyway was super crucial because I used to see KRS-One tags down there. SMK had the Master Ace Incorporated straight lettered chromes back there, which, you know, just going back there was just like, whoa, it was like almost going into like a whole different dimension, you know what I'm saying? Even though F Street was always bombed up, you know what I'm saying? But going back there was always something like, yo, you know.
It wasn't always bombed up.
No, I know. And it had to be clean sometime.
Yeah.
When you guys were in this pursuit of becoming like, you know, getting up, you know, being up and being recognized, or even getting better at graffiti, is there anything that you would do to, you know, try to, I guess, train yourself? Because I could think about, again, my own personal experience when I was starting to write graffiti. There's nobody there to show me like, oh, this is what you do, you know what I'm saying, to do good graffiti. You know, it's a lot of trial and error with myself and my best friend who also wrote graffiti with me, you know, actually for like 2 or 3 years, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't really know anybody, you know. For yourself, you know, and I might have had access to more information at that time than you guys did when you guys were getting started. But was there anything that you would personally do to, you know, like just try to expand on what you knew about the culture, or how would you find it?
I did a lot of talking. Who wants to take this first?
I just see it every day riding on a bus.
Yeah.
No, our subways wasn't. They kept our subways clean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you put something on the subway, it's gone in 20 minutes.
Right.
So I really didn't hit the subways a lot, but mostly the bus, on walls, on store, you know, on walls a little bit like that.
Mm-hmm. Now, would you practice your joint on paper?
Oh, all the time.
All right.
Yeah, I
And-
practice and like say that's why like I add little dimensions like
Mm-hmm.
the little squares on the end, the shadows out a little bit. I stole that from Chuck and I never got TKO.
Okay.
You know, I seen how they did it and I add little
remember
stuff and everything
TKO.
like that. Then I add little colors in it sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
but you know.
Now, we carry around black books. I asked you to hit my black book last time I said, did you guys used to carry books around and catch other people's signatures in it?
Nah.
That wasn't a thing.
No,
Nah. Okay.
everybody was too arrogant. We was too arrogant to do that.
Right.
But now I'm gonna get it.
Yeah. I mean, you know, sometimes people don't do it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like there's certain, you know.
I mean, 'cause we was young then,
on a
so
certain level.
we didn't even think that far.
Yeah.
We didn't think that far.
I used to be super annoying. I'd be running up to people and be like, "Yo, can you write in my book, please?" Like
Yeah.
that was my, you know. But I got a lot of people's signatures and people to do stuff in my book, so I guess it paid off, you know. The first time I ever met SMK, he opened my book and there was like 6 of his stickers in my book that I pulled down in Georgetown, but they were like falling off. Like I didn't like pry them off, but I put them in my book. It was like, I just put these up. Like, slammed the book back in my chest. I didn't think he was gonna like me after that, but I still have those stickers, by the way. They're still in my book. They're safe. What about you, Da? I mean, you were right there, you know, in the midst of things.
So my being right there was definitely short-lived. You know, I always had longed to have been more part of that. You know, I moved I would go back for visits for family and everything else. But, you know, I found myself at a point where I also had no one to share my passion with. Eventually, it was a few friends locally that I was able to like build with and bring them down with the H-Bomb crew, and you know, share with the tag, and every now and then, hey, let's go and paint something on the back of this wall in the dark, or you know, tag buses. But it was mostly through things like, you know, watching Style Wars a million times, or like IGT, going up to New York and coming back with like, you know, these zines that were just a bunch of different like. It was kind of like organized confusion. You know, it was like it was a beautiful like collage of different pieces and little articles, and you know, to someone from the outside looking in, it'd be like, what is this mess? You know, but it was a beautiful thing, and I would always long any trip I made. It's like I got to get more IGTs. And for those listening, that's International Graffiti Times, or International Get Hit Times, and or the Subway Sun, as they would call it. But also, what was said, the Subway art book, spray can art book, was also very eye-opening for me, because beyond New York, being able to see different countries, even in the West Coast. I spent some time on the West Coast and got a chance to see some of the graffiti out there, Cholo Graffiti on Mission in San Francisco. So I had an opportunity to like see different things, and you know, there was a time, I guess in the early 90s, where like I was exposed to other guys that were influenced by different things, seeing their style, seeing their painting techniques, trying to incorporate with me, you know. So there was definitely like an experimental stage of me trying to find my identity. At the end of the day, I kind of always lean more towards the traditional train graffiti that I originally learned, you know. So that's pretty much it, you know, just drawing, staying, being surrounded with other writers was one of the funnest things for me. You know, meeting SMK, meeting Rust, meeting Cycle, and you know, having this kind of conglomerate of guys from different places that came together to catch wreck in DC.
Yeah. You know, I used to see some of your black book work, where you used to take the X-Acto knife and cut out sections of the letters and paste magazines in them, and that was always like, I was like, that's next level. Like, I couldn't imagine, like, I'm sitting here trying to like make my letters look perfect on a paper, and here you're cutting out big chunks of them and sticking magazines behind them, and I was like, yo, that's crazy. And they'd be sealed. You sealed the back pages so that you can't like see the back. I think that, yeah, that's right. I'm gonna need one of those in my book.
You know, I spent, you know, years as a just traditional illustrator, artist, got into commercial art, graphic design. So, you know, all that traditional paste up mechanical type of skills incorporated in my black book work. You know, drafting techniques and things of that nature. And, you know, having the luxury of going to nice rack spots to get all these fancy art supplies that I wouldn't have been able to afford otherwise. So Sure. Kyle, Mesk, you have a similar kind of, I guess, art style, like when you're working in books and layering things, cutting them out, and that's, would you say that's like, you know, a little bit more towards like your punk rock roots and like the idea of DIY, like, and kind of creating things, you know, out of other things?
That's something I've been playing around with recently, and it did actually come. There was a guy named Freddie Alva up in Queens who's been putting together these black book books, or zines actually. And I don't know, a guy from Richmond, Virginia, RVA Dave, who put me in touch with him, said, hey, you know, Kyle's done all these flyers, you should have him do something. So I couldn't quite figure out what I was gonna do, so it was pick a band and do a page for him, 8.5 by 11. So I basically just wrote out their name a ton of times. I was like, I have all these things. What am I feeling? What am I feeling? Oh, you know, punk rock flyers, and also like record covers, like the Sex Pistols, were collages. I'm gonna cut it out. I'm gonna make it look like a collage. And instead of like scanning it and making it flat, I actually just took a photograph of it with my phone and sent it to the dude, and there were all these shadows, and I was like, that works. And it was it just gave me a new way of looking at it, as opposed to just pushing my name or pushing something else. The sense of time that was coming through with the layering, which just currently still floats my boat.
Yeah. Your piece in the museum is kind of takes off some of those notes, right?
Yeah, I ran with it. I come up with a few iterations, and you're like, no, there's gotta be MESK in there somewhere. Come on, man. I was like,
Oh.
for the love of. And so eventually, it got stuck in there on the side, but it got stuck in there as like a little sticker.
Right.
And I wanted to be able to have that like that distance, but still like engagement.
Okay.
So
I like the just like how the aesthetic of that looks. It's different, you know what I'm saying? It's not like something that you see every day when people just try to like do their graffiti, they try to do a perfect tag, they try to do a perfect set of bubble letters. I like the idea that it could be something that's not like so, formed, it can be a little bit more, ethereal's not the right word, but there can be a little bit more variance to it. So this is an interesting question, I think, and that's something that I ponder to myself, particularly as I have a young son that I'm raising now. He's 12, and whether or not, if he ever decides that he wants to become a graffiti writer and do some of the things that I was doing, like when I was 16 and 17 years old, which I would be totally terrified of. But so how would you describe to a younger version of yourself your experience in graffiti culture? Like, if you were to grab your 12-year-old self, right, and be like, listen, this is what you're about to jump into, how would you explain that to him?
I don't know. I think it'd be like a multimedia experience. It'd be like music. You feel that music, like that sound, that thump, or like that, just like screeching sound. Like, how do you? This is like, do you see how this visual mashes up with that? That type of engagement of like kind of creating your own world.
Yeah.
That's, I don't know. I think I explained it to my son when he was 12, and he was like, whatever, it's not soccer. Thank God. I mean, really thank God. Like, if he had gone out and started bombing, I think I would have moved to like the country.
I mean, he was in the right place for it, so.
Yeah, but a different time.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of, I used to work at night, and, I think I see all like, I worked at night in Soho. So like, you'd want to catch wreck in Soho.
Right.
It's like big name. And, I think I saw like 2 kids writing over the course of when I was down there.
Okay.
So, not a whole lot. But, he went to art and design for a little bit, and that has a huge history of writing, and still does.
Yeah.
And in fact, they have a lot of real top shelf, first and second, not, or well-known writers from the 80s that are alumni.
Graffiti High School, right?
Yeah.
Is what they call Graffiti High School.
So they come in and they teach, they'll do like little workshops and classes, which I think is really cool.
That's dope.
And the bathrooms are still bombed. But Noah was like, why would you write your name over and over again and create a trail in which you could get caught? He's like, that makes no sense to me whatsoever. But it's a different time.
You got to switch it up.
Yeah, well, that's one thing. But it's a different time. There's cameras everywhere now.
Right.
Back in the day, there just wasn't.
Right.
If you had a camera, it was, it's like this big, and
Right.
it cost a lot of money, and you left it at home. You did not have it out at night.
You probably take it a couple weeks to get a picture back from it.
Yeah.
Once you to finally finish the roll and develop it.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I had a night out with I'm not sure if you were there, Da, but SMK was with us, and a guy named Rem had a video camera. And at the time, there was Videograph. And we were like, yo, we're going to do this. We're going to go bombing. And we're going to get this videotaped. And we're going to submit it to Videograph, and it's on.
Yeah.
People are going to know what's up.
Yeah.
And, you know, I got jumped
That night?
that night.
Is it on film?
No, thank God.
Oh,
No.
okay.
We got chased by the cops like almost immediately. And then out of nowhere, these dudes rolled up and were like, yo, come here. I'm going to kick your ass or something like that. And Kyle was with me, SMK, excuse me. And he, I think one guy swung at him and SMK connected. And some guy hit and just grabbed my sweatshirt. I had some, I don't know what it was, but it did not have the tensile strength that it needed, because when he punched me, like it literally ripped down, like not like the inverse of the Hulk. His punch ripped my shirt, and I was like, boom, out the gates. I was gone, and SMK and I were just like, pop, 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 pop. Then, you know, hop fences, etc. And I think SMK got cut, so we ended up going down to GW Hospital, and I think he either got stitches or he just got cleaned up, you know, make sure there's no tetanus. When we come out, it's like hours later. The same dudes roll up, and we're like, you gotta be joking. And it was like, you know, this little skirmish fist fight until, you know, taxi cabs were like, ah! Like, and you know, and yeah.
So just so I'm clear, that there was no footage shot that night of you guys bombing.
No, Rem after after the cops rolled up on us, I think he drove around for a little bit and then jetted.
It's like, I'm taking this video camera home. Where
Yeah.
it's supposed to be.
Yeah, right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's too expensive.
Right, right.
So, and it's a you know, the surveillance is incredibly commonplace.
Okay.
If it's not on your phone, there's, you know, increase of CCTV.
Fair enough. Randy, would you say to a 14, 15-year-old Ari Randy, you know what I'm saying, about to jump in to doing graffiti, you know, now, you know, you have, you know, these years of history after, and you see how people responded to your work. Would you say anything to younger version of yourself?
Catch up with somebody to do better art and learn to do my art better.
So you say, like, tell them to stick with it?
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah.
That's respect. That's respect. You ever think about that? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, I was telling him earlier that I regret that I stopped drawing when I was drawing.
mm-hmm.
You know, because I lost it.
Right.
You know, I might get it back, but you know.
I mean, I seen you when you put that can in your hand for the first time. You still got it. You just need a couple days, you know, busting out a few tags. You will be right back, you know.
No, but like I told him, I used to know how to do. I self-taught myself how to draw portraits when I was about 7.
Right.
So I used to be able to do that, but I couldn't do the shading or anything like that. But anything you see, I can just draw by hand.
Okay.
So I should have took some art class or something back then, but I just never thought about it. So.
Okay. Da.
Well, like Mesk, I have a son as well, and you know, I've kind of tried to explain to him, you know, just educate him. But the one thing is, the variable is the time.
Mm-hmm.
We're in a completely different time. Everything's changed.
Sure.
So, you know, if I were to speak to a younger me back then, then it would be a different conversation rather than trying to tell a younger person now about back then, because it's different. It's hard to say, but you know, I guess the one piece of advice that I would say is follow your intuition. If you feel like you shouldn't go back to the spot because you saw someone earlier and you weren't sure if it was a cop or not, don't go back.
Just assume it was a cop.
Follow your gut.
Yeah.
Because that's how I got caught out there.
You know, I always talk to, outside of my son, you know, because I have a lot of younger writers around me, and I always tell them, you know, it's a risk versus reward thing. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of benefits that I personally feel like come out of like learning how to paint good graffiti, you know, there's math, there's color theory, there's all of these things that you kind of pick up and you can kind of like, kind of use towards other things. But it's definitely a risk versus reward thing, and sometimes you have to bump your head a few times before you realize,
I will say that, if you look at some of the pioneers, not many of those folks were, properly trained. People just kind of ran with it. A lot of us probably, were nose deep in comic books growing up. So the type of art that we saw, the colors that we saw, came from like cartoons. They came from comic books, and those are the things that we relayed into our artwork. On as far as graffiti is concerned. So, it's for those that do have the proper art training, then they're able to do different things and elaborate and embellish. But, the early days, you just had people with imagination, and making something out of nothing, pretty much.
I read the Blade book, the King of Graffiti book, and one of the things that he said, which kind of stood out to me, was like, he was always trying to create original characters, cartoon characters, things like that, where he saw like a lot of people doing Mickey Mouse or, other popular characters. Like he was always trying to create something that, was purely of his mind. And I think that he's very, very successful in doing that. Like the graffiti is kind of trippy and, very cool and original. And I always found like artists that dove into their own personal stuff without trying to, I'm guilty of reproducing, Bodake cartoons and things like that in my work, but that's so because it's a cultural thing, I always see like artists like that are creating from their own, personal, space, always tend to be like the fresher artists, you know what I'm saying? When you boil it down, and that's why I love seeing characters that are like, I don't know what that character is. It looks cool, you know what I'm saying? But I don't recognize it, you know what I'm saying? Which I always think is really dope. I've always loved about your characters, your mugs, you know what I'm saying? And just like the characters that you worked into yours. I'm getting to see a little bit more of your work, like abstract forms, the things that you showed me, which are really dope, you know what I'm saying? I didn't see a lot of that next to your piece. I saw a lot of it in your piece before, I think, like the abstractions in the letter forms. And we talked about how I went into LaFon, I saw the piece with the hydraulics, which just kind of blew my mind. And I know I'm talking about a bunch of stuff and you guys at home are not able to see it, but maybe we'll be able to share it with you at some future time. We can show you some of these pieces and some of the work that we're talking about. Looking at the time, we started a little bit late. We're going to go a little bit longer than 8 o'clock. We've got a couple more questions here, and I just want to kind of throw them out. And we can start with Randy for this one. Growing up and coming of age in DC during the mid-'80s, can you share an experience that's related to you getting up and writing in the city that stands out to you? Some wow that happened while you guys were out writing your name.
Nothing really never happened, but one of the good experiences when I got the bridge.
When you got the bridge?
Yeah, because I was mad that Lisa got me to the bridge.
Yeah.
Because the bridge was a perfect spot.
Yeah.
And I always thought I hit the perfect spot. So when they got it, I was like, damn.
How many names was up there by the time you got up there?
No, just Lisa, Tanya, Janet, and a girl named Shelly, and another girl named Quilla.
So all the ladies went up there first? What?
Lisa and her crew. Lisa and them did it first. Nobody that didn't. And for a while I didn't do it. I'm like, damn, they beat it. Then I like, man, I'm going up there.
When I was talking to Lisa,
I'm going up there.
she told me she started writing graffiti in '82.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a minute. I don't think I know any other writers from DC that started that early. Not that I've actually personally met.
Yeah.
You say '83?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, '83.
I think so.
I think Ultra is '83. I know that there was some other graffiti on the Red Line in and around that time, but Lisa said she started writing in '82. I was like, she's the earliest, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, for a fact you were writing? She's like, yeah, I was writing in '82. So that would put her really, really early on. Definitely a trendsetter, you know what I'm saying? Obviously you said, she was going and hitting a spot like that and then kind of like.
Yeah, that was our only really big spot, per se. That stood out to me.
Right.
But like her name stood out a little bit and I was like, because you know everybody put like name, but she just made her Lisa of the World. And I'm like, okay, and it stood out. Then I would, I met her later on, but when her name kind of stood out, then I just okay. That's when I like, okay, I gotta get original.
Just jump back, because she was writing, and you guys hadn't met yet.
No.
Okay.
We met, a few years after.
Okay.
But not that far after, but she when she first started writing, we didn't know each other.
Now, just was GAC already a thing at that time?
When she started writing, or when I did?
Well, I'm just saying in general, at that time, 83, 84.
Oh, yeah.
It was already started. So, was she already with GAC, and you were with GAC, but just hadn't met each other
Yeah,
yet?
because there were so many people.
Right.
We might know of each other, but know each other. But the first, we like, I heard a dog, and I know it's a dog, and I know it's a mess, but we don't even know each other.
Right.
Because like she was northeast, southeast, some people northwest. Not too many people are in southwest. But then later on, we like, okay, all right, okay, that's Elise.
Right.
Then we met.
And for those who may not know, GAC is Gangster Chronicles, one of the early crews here in Washington D.C. That had chapters all across the city. Is that correct? Like all four corners essentially. Is that kind of rare for crews back then?
Yeah.
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 And do you have any idea of how many members might have been like in the early 80s?
Nah, because there was so many people. Then you have some people just say they was with it, but never wasn't with it.
Sure.
Then like say we might go out and I bring 3 friends who's not even with it, but they just with me for the day.
Right.
And then so we all get to fighting. They gonna fight with.
Okay. They're gonna rep GAC at the same time.
Yeah.
Would you say dozens? Definitely dozens?
Oh, in the whole city?
Yeah.
Oh, way more than that.
Hundreds.
Yeah.
That's hundreds, a crew hundreds strong.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not everybody writes graffiti though.
No.
You might have a few people in there that are really
Out of
doing
100, maybe 30, 40.
Okay. That's still a lot.
Yeah, because a lot of people was doing it then.
That's still a big crew.
Yeah, a lot of people was doing it then.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fun. Mesk, how about you? Experiences that stand out, painting, bombing?
I already told you an embarrassing one.
Oh, yeah.
2 stand out. One was meeting Dan, and then another one was inspired by Videograph. Like just the Whitehurst Freeway was down. They were doing some renovation, and Rem and I just walked it and just killed it. It looked like Paisley by the time we were done.
Just alternating tags?
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun. It was just like ridiculously easy. Like I think they put it down to like 1 lane or something. So it's like clearly saw the car. There's a jersey, you duck, and then
How long did it run for?
I think until the end of the construction. I think they buffed it then.
Okay.
So that was
for a
fun.
while.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, it's fun. And I was doing crew at the time, so I was down in Georgetown all the time.
So you got to see it
Oh yeah,
pretty often?
yeah.
Nice. And it was just like, you didn't really have to worry about it. It was just like, felt like you could do whatever you want at that point?
Yeah, I was like, I'm pretending I'm in New York.
Like going hard.
There's like 12 people, that maybe tops, that I know that do graffiti in Washington D.C. and I'm pretending that I'm like, making it big. It was fun.
And those 12 people, that's MCA crew? The MCA originals?
I mean, yeah, sure. And then I think that there were other crews that were popping up at the time.
Okay. Dal, what about you? Anything that stands out, experience that stands out while painting here in the city?
I really can't think of, other than like our battles with the law enforcement. Was kind of fun, the mystery of the other writers and finding out who they were. And, like SMK and myself, we didn't know each other, but we would tag next to each other and like come back the next day like, oh, it was kind of like a form of like communication. And that eventually led to us meeting together, you know what I mean? And same with MESK and the people here already had established. We had like, it was kind of like 3 groups converging to finally meet each other and then kind of become a part of a larger network at that point. And that was, very cool. Meeting Dan also he was the enigma. He was the guy that you saw everywhere, but never knew who he was. To finally meet him, and so like little things like that. I guess kind of like the unity of the scene and having that all come together. That to me was fun, impressionable.
Randy, you never actually met Dan. That's correct?
No,
you met him?
I met Dan, no.
Okay. So when he was just coming out, he was probably a few years younger than you, right? Like, but he told me that you were the reason why he was really doing what he was doing, And so, but when you met him, was he already writing?
Yeah.
He was already writing?
Yeah.
And because he was a younger member of Gangster Chronicles, yes? GSC?
He used to be around, but
He used to be around.
yeah, he's around, but by that time I was dying. I was really getting away from, but I was still coming around. We'll see him, but I met Dan. Dan, cool.
Okay.
Glass keep falling up.
Mine was too. That's why I had to take the mask off.
Yeah, but I remember his name and everything. I'm like, okay, that's right. They said, let's just go down. Like, okay.
And then, like, flash forward a few years, maybe you not thinking about graffiti anymore.
And he was still going.
And he was still going, but then you started to get calls about the book and about the documentary film, or just people trying to reach out to you about it. You know what I'm saying, dude? Were you aware that Dan, his status, his legend had kind of grown that big in the city?
It didn't surprise me because he kept going.
Yeah.
So I used to always see his name, so it didn't surprise me, and he didn't stop. So no, it didn't surprise me.
Okay.
It didn't surprise me too much. But he was always quiet, so that is. Yeah, a lot of stuff that came out of the book about him, I never knew it, but it didn't surprise me because he was quiet.
Right.
And back then, we couldn't tell the difference in everybody. We didn't judge nobody on anything.
Right.
Some people might be quiet for different reasons, but it didn't surprise me that he kept on going.
Yeah. So, Dal, you touched on something which was, and something we've been kind of talking about, that there are like three kind of major veins like for graffiti in Washington, D.C. There is the punk rock and hardcore kind of lane, right? There is a hip hop lane, that kind of started in like the early 80s, probably maybe one of the first iterations, although I'm sure punk rock had graffiti present with it too, like in the early 80s.
Yeah, late
And
80s,
then-
I think.
Yeah. And then you had this other kind of community of writers that was not necessarily go graffiti,
No,
but like
but-
kind of centered around
But you
it.
could, now that I think you really could consider that could be classified as go-go graffiti back then.
Right.
Because mostly everybody was going to go-go's and all that. So I can see how that term would fit.
Right.
So it kind of would fit.
Yeah, and we see this kind of collision, you know what I'm saying? Like, not a collision, but like a meeting up in the middle, right? But in New York, you don't have the go-go element.
Yeah.
You have the punk rock, you have the hardcore element, you have the hip-hop element, and they kind of like converge at
Exactly.
certain levels.
Yeah.
But here we have almost a third community, and still, sometime in the early 90s when Dan comes and meets with you and with SMK, and then and you're present. Now, those communities have kind of come together, to a certain extent.
Well, I would say in regards to like the other go-go writers, we didn't really know. I mean, as someone who rode the bus and who would tag the bus, I would see other writers from all over DC. Saw R.E. Randy, I saw like Southeast Shit, E.K. Wayne, and Cool Disco Dan, and people like that. So I would see these tags. Didn't really know who they were. Out of all of those people, we only knew Dan. Like Dan was the guy who crossed over and wanted to know us. We wanted to know him. And unfortunately, more people from his world didn't cross over as well.
Right.
At least at the time that I was there.
Right.
It was interesting because DC writers, the majority of the DC writers that I encountered were usually not local to DC.
Right.
They were from the suburbs of Virginia or the suburbs of Maryland who would come into DC, unless you were out of town, out of state, going to school for college or whatnot.
Right.
And then you had those people who were living in DC at the time, which is how we would actually spend many a nights in George Washington University's dorms hanging out and plotting our next, attack mission, So, but yeah, it was an interesting dynamic. But you had a lot of people from the hardcore scene, a lot of skateboarders. I wouldn't say people from the hip hop scene per se. It was just, everybody kind of at the time was into everything.
Sure. But you have, I look at MCA as a crew, where I see those, kind of three strands kind of coming together, because Dan's present and you're present and you're present and Kyle's and SMK is present. And so you have these other, other writers also, involved, Mock, what I'm saying,
Yeah.
and who heavy in the skateboarding, and, you have all of these different kind of subcultures and music, other subcultures kind of tying together with MCA crew, which is really, really cool. Coming in, I probably only came into the game like a couple of years after you guys formed, maybe 4 or 5 years after you formed. But when I came to the game, it was like MCA, like you're looking at this and I'm thinking, oh, these guys have been doing this for years. You know what I'm saying? Like, and you were, what I'm saying? But the number of years is really like, a handful. You're talking about 6 or 7, what I'm saying? Years, like where you guys have, kind of been already doing it, But to me, I was like, oh, these guys must be professional or something, like, because I'm trying to like learn how to do this and I can't seem to make this can't do anything. But learning later, though, what I'm saying, that because I assumed everybody all hung out together and knew each other, what I'm saying. Learning later, what I'm saying, that some people didn't know each other. Some people only met each other like a few times, what I'm saying, like, or got to hang out with each other like over a summer or something like that, That was always really, really interesting to me, what I'm saying, like, because again, I came from, I was very similar to Disco Dan, where I have sheets and sheets of graffiti writers' names, what I'm saying. I used to just make lists of all the names that I used to see written up. And Dan also did something very similar, where he would do these roll call lists with people's names on them, which is how I heard your name for the very first time, what I'm saying. He always shout you out. But I always, in my head, imagined that everybody hung out together and, did graffiti together. And that was definitely not the case.
That's so dear.
It's a little weird.
And as you said, I did meet Dan at the Go-Go.
Yeah.
I met him at the Go-Go, so it was like, you're right, he's tired of everything.
Yeah. There was a couple other writers that were, I would kind of started in the Go-Go, kind of community, which is Hobo of Everywhere, which is Ultra. Do you remember Hobo of Everywhere? Or
I know Hobo.
Yeah.
I remember Hobo.
And then there was Go-Go Phase, which is Sec. What I'm saying? He starts as Go-Go Phase underneath the HOA crew, which had Gore-Tex Grizz, and who did the double stack Go-Go style name, but then also had Sir and Rec that were straight up like they were trying to do New York style burners.
Yeah.
So he came up underneath them as Go-Go Phase. I only know a couple of writers that kind of like made that transition, that were going to do burners. Even Dan has pieces, what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I have seen, I have outlines and stuff, and I've seen things that he's painted where he does, it's mostly soft style letters and things like that, but he was trying to do pieces, which is, I think, was really cool, what I'm saying?
Well, Son Rec had something on at least one piece on the red line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the
And
one
I
that the
was
high
like-
up one.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
that's possible. There's something going, like,
right.
and later on I found out that, like, one of my favorite childhood bands, Minor Threat, actually played a show with Trouble Funk.
Mm-hmm.
So, that stuff was, it wasn't a lot, but it was still,
Mm-hmm. You
Things
saw,
are being
saw this
sewn
overlap.
together.
Yeah, you see the overlap. We got,
and that actually, we used to, when I was a band promoter, or club promoter, show promoter, whatever, something like that, show promoter. And we used to rent the Safari Club, which was not a big club, but on some nights they would have, I remember seeing all their go-go flyers. So, there was some cross-pollination there. I would crush, at least my version of crushing, the bathrooms.
right.
And with hopes that next time around I would see a new name, and then I could trace it back, like what happened, how long did it ago did this happen, who played there, You know, is this a go-go writer? Is this someone from a different city?
Right.
That type of thing.
Man, I only wrote my name in Safari Club one time, and back then I had a pager. I get a next day I got a 911 page, and I call my friend who is into hardcore. I don't typically go to the shows, but I went in, and he was like, "Yo, Cast wants to kill you." And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "You wrote your name in the bathroom." He was calling on the microphone. "Who's Eon? Who's Eon CIA? Come buff your tag." And you weren't there, and you didn't buff your tag, and now he's looking for you. I was like, "Oh man." But
Well,
he was really
that's
nice.
Cast.
He was really nice about it.
Love him.
He was really nice about it. He told me, he's like, I'm about to be on an extended trip. If not, then I would find you and beat you up. But for
Shout out
now,
to Cast.
okay. Yeah, shout out to Cast, man. That was my one tagging experience in the Safari Club. So, as we get into the end of it, you know what I'm saying? This is maybe a broad question, you know what I'm saying? But maybe it's easy to answer. I don't know. What are your thoughts on how graffiti has evolved over the past, 25, 30 years? I mean, you guys all really literally got started into the culture at a time when it's totally illegal. You know, people don't necessarily respect it outside of the culture. People don't understand it outside of the culture. And now flash forward 25, almost 30 years later, graffiti is, considered to be, modern American art, and we knew it early on, but the general public didn't know it. And now, you have companies and corporations, they want to use it more and more. We've seen it, kind of pick up steam through the 90s and into the early 2000s, where companies are not afraid of graffiti anymore, and people want at least the aesthetic of graffiti in their spaces, whether it be some form of a mural or even straight up burners. So we've seen that almost come full circle. Now I have a theory on it, which is people who grew up appreciating graffiti art got a little bit older and got a little bit of money, and now they're able to really flex, and that they like that as their aesthetic. But I think just more and more people have become introduced to it and like it. So I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts on how it has evolved over the years? And you can take it first if you like.
Well, I would say, media over time has had a big part of that. The commercialization of hip hop, obviously, and the internet, and just making, I guess it started out with zines, and then internet, the hip hop, or I should say graffiti, became accessible to a broader audience, to the point now where if you look at stylistically, the graffiti scene has become very homogenized. Whereas there would be things that would pertain to a certain region, that because other people were exposed to those things, now you'll see Philly tall hand style in Australia. You know what I mean? You'll see, New York style graffiti in China, and you'll see the real cool 90s airbrushy, glowy highlight characters that Hex and Slick made famous in Europe. So it's and once again, you'll see the European styles that we drooled over in spray can art, in our work. You know what I mean? So it's transcended, all over the place. So that's a big change, from how we came up to where things are now. And it was progressive, but now it's graffiti's everywhere. And whether it's on apparel, whether it's on a Louis Vuitton bag, it's accepted and it's desired. And it's just like you said, it's a new American modern art form.
Right.
Not even just American, international.
Now, global.
I mean, I agree, 100%. I just wish I would have kept working on my art. I wish I'd have took some art classes to improve my art. So kids who doing little art, don't give up.
Right.
Things get better.
You feel like they can see now a clearer path to how they might be able to use something like graffiti, in their future.
Yeah, there's always a future or something. Because If you don't know it, you got to get try. You
Sure.
never know. You
I
gotta
always
try.
tell all my youngins, I was like, you might not become the best graffiti writer in the
Yeah.
world, but you're going to get some discipline out of this, and it's going to lead you to something else that
Exactly.
creative, that you're going to be passionate about.
Like you
Most
said-
of them do. They find it. They don't bomb for more than a year, but they go off and they'll be a graphic designer or a videographer or something like
Exactly.
that.
That's like
photographer.
what I was going to say. As you said earlier, you can do graffiti, but it can learn you to learn some other things.
Right.
Like you said, mathematics, other things. So you never know. You never know what you can do.
Excellent.
You just don't give up.
Right. MESK, you?
I don't even remember the question.
It's, what are your thoughts on how graffiti has evolved over the past 30 years?
I don't know. I know. I'm thankful for Roger Gassman.
Yep.
He has done a phenomenal job documenting,
Shout out to Roger.
yeah, in a very intelligent way, what's going on in DC, and then of course what's going on globally, and what's going on in America. And I think he's done a really good job with that. And I'm thankful for it. And he's also able to document things that I look back on and I have good memories of. The 90s were a phenomenal time. There was so much going on. Hip hop was just, 80s and 90s, hip hop was just great. People were still breakdancing, people were doing graffiti, people were DJing, and people were rapping, and it was a rich culture. Concurrently, the hardcore scene was that's my, I still listen to it, and to the chagrin of my children, not around my wife, but it's just not going to happen. But also not as rich, but with that you would have like someone like Henry Rollins that grew up in DC, band State of Alert, SOA, then became Black Flag. He became lead singer of Black Flag, and then started doing spoken word. So and poetry. So he was a good example of where the media would be music, art, and then poetry. So only three things. It didn't have that full three-dimensional thing that the hip hop culture had, and it was great. It was great. I mean, we literally had theme music to listen to inspire us. I remember when like Brand Nubian came out with their album, and it was just like, it was amazing. And then like Dwick in the 90s.
Right.
It's just like, come on. I mean, like it was so creatively rich that it was super inspirational. And you wanted to do visuals that were like, this is your theme song, so you wanted to do things that felt like it.
Right.
Whether it's like direct appropriation, that your piece looked like you were referencing the soles of Timberland boots.
Right.
And you wanted to be as tough as that. Or maybe it was the colors.
Right.
Or maybe you were rocking some like crazy fill-in that came from like some sick Jerbo gear.
Okay.
Where it was like this plaid. You're like, I'm gonna steal those colors.
I'm going to make that my fill.
Yeah.
Right.
And so when you were giving yourself these permissions, it was, you could then go to the National Gallery of Art and be like, well, I want to do work like why do I'm going to use a paintbrush on the wall. It takes forever, but I can do it. Or I can, like, when you're doing your little skinny cap thing and you're collecting all the paint, throw it on the wall. Why? Jackson Pollock did it.
Right.
I want to let drips happen. You're like, Dose was a good example. I don't know if that was intentional,
Right.
but
But it looked good.
but yeah, I mean, he did like this insane alien down at the aqueducts, and I think that blew everyone's mind, And H.R. Giger, he's the designer for Alien and Joker, Jerry and I, we went off on that. Like that was a major thing. And then from there, like next thing you know, like Joker's looking at like Venetian chairs and like interior design for his inspiration and like ironwork, and we're like way the hell out there,
Right.
and trying to like just get new shapes.
Right. And just trying to get drawing inspiration out of those
Yeah,
things.
because we're stuck on these 4 letters, so like you're saying, like it gets boring after a while.
So if I may redirect to the question, because we were asking like, what's your thought on the evolution of it over the past 30 years, do you feel like maybe there's I guess less inspiration to draw from, or less energy to draw from for that creative?
No, I mean,
Which is different.
There's some phenomenal. I mean, I take it for granted. Like, I don't go to Bushwick a lot and look at the art that's there. I can't help but look at all the tags. The new kids that are up now because of COVID and the police not cracking down on it aren't that great. But a lot of the old heads are out, so it's neat to see them. It's like riding a bike.
Do you have a favorite that you could, like the person's work?
I live
That's
in
a current-
Flatbush. There's a guy named Dinker, or Dink.
Dink, oh yeah.
And he's got such great hand.
He's
STEM,
OG.
Yeah,
Oh,
STEM, YKK,
Yeah.
hits the YNN, sorry. I'm tired. I'm always tired. Or I'm always off. I'm always a little off. So he paints the, I guess, I don't know what they call it, the ghost line or whatever. It's an old abandoned freight line. Or maybe it still runs, but he's,
Still churning out really dope pieces.
Yeah. So, I mean, the list can go on.
Sure.
I drive by 238. I'm always like about to get in a car accident on the Bronx River Parkway, trying to like, oh, what's that? And I'm always like trying to find like, I have enough time to be like, kids, we're gonna pull over and park, but that never happens. What do I think about the graffiti scene now? I'm taking a lot of time. I don't know. I think there's still a lot of really good artwork.
Yeah.
I can't remember the guy's name. He does like the pieces of animals that are like cut up. It's like nachos or something like that, or something like that. Phenomenal.
Okay.
And I'm always like, I'm shooting things to Da and to Joker, like all the time. Like, oh, I quit. I quit again. Oh my! It's a good thing I never started up again because I quit again. Like, this is phenomenal. Like, just like these, I saw this this painting of this wolf, these 2 wolves, it was red and black, and it was with fat caps.
Yeah.
And like I tell you, these fat caps, I don't know how they did it, but first off, it's phenomenal. Second, I mean, the physical control of the hand. Just the physicality of it, knowing like how the impossibility of it,
Right.
Because it wasn't like it was like, unless of course they rigged something that was like this perfectly like softball. I mean, not even like beach ball, that like over the repetitive strokes ended up making this wolf's face.
Right.
I'm like, I don't care what that is. That's
It's
amazing.
cool. Right.
So, there's people still doing things. I think the work that the Revoke is doing with his mechanized
yeah.
spray things, for me, I think is absolutely phenomenal.
Right.
Stuff that KR was doing, not only with his ink, but his paintings and his specifically his mailboxes. I was in Soho, coming home from working in the restaurant, and I would see them fresh, and they just always blew me away. I wanted to like take one home.
Those are definitely some of my favorites too. Just seeing stuff like that.
So I mean, I think it's multifaceted, and
you mentioned, you quit. You know what I'm saying in that conversation. So that kind of brings us to our last question of the night, which is, and particularly I'm gonna put this towards MESK and Randy, but you can chip in. But I know we painted over the years, like pretty frequently. But for you guys, like coming into this space, into the 14th Street Graffiti Museum, it's the first time in years you guys painted. right? That's correct.
Yeah.
I think we did the math, but it might be like 20 years, something in and around that area for you, and then for you it might be a little bit longer, correct?
Yep.
So what was it like after being away for a long period of time and then coming back into the culture over this past year, and then, you know, even kind of stepping in into kind of chip in to create this space, you know, with your work? What was that like? And Randy, I'm gonna throw that to you first.
I was happy to play a part.
Yeah.
And it was pretty easy. It was easy, especially when the one I did right there was pretty easy, and so that's why I went on and added a little more shade and green and everything. So it was all right.
Something you want to do a little bit more of, you think?
Yeah, I'll throw some more. I'll throw some more.
Get some of them portraits out on the wall soon.
Yeah, I'll throw some more.
Yeah,
I'll
that's
do
what's
it.
up. That's what's up. And Mesk, what about for you? What was that like? Like coming back to DC and then, you know, having. I mean, I think you painted for like 14 hours or something like that. 15 hours for your piece here.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Over a period of like 24 hours, you painted like 14 of those hours.
Yeah, it was like hour and a half the first night, and then 13 hours the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's because I overextended myself, which I did today.
It's not bad to have ambition.
No, except for like, you know, when you're painting next to someone like Da, and you're like, oh, I can never do that. You know, you just like, well, I've gotten to the point now, because I'm 47, that I don't judge myself by the clarity and the perfection that Da has. But yeah, now I'm just like, okay, I can't compete. You know, like I hope I just don't screw things up.
I mean, is that how you felt when you were in here? Because you looked like you knew exactly what you were doing. Pretty much
you
all
can
the
ask
time.
My son, he was like, "You seem stressed." I was like, "Man, I was lost."
I was just
like,
looking up and you were like climbing on the wall, and I was like, man, it's like you never left.
Well, no, it was just like keep going. Eventually, it'll all start to make sense.
Did it kind of come back in that way?
Yeah. That's why one of the reasons why I'm here.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you'd reached out to me about doing skateboards, and I was like, I don't have time. It's always been, I don't have time.
Yeah.
And then I saw the skateboard that Joker did, and I was like, oh, I wish I had time. And so then my friend was working at Zoo York, and he's like, oh, I need you to do this. Would you do a skateboard? I'm like, yeah, this time around I will.
Yeah.
But you know, I was out chasing paper. You know,
Yeah.
part of it was, you know, definitely for my family.
Well, you have to.
Also, it was like, you know, it was very exciting.
Yeah.
Just for the record, I just want to say that Mesk here has always been someone artistically that made everything he did look effortlessly. Always. And that was something I always admired about him. So for him to come in here and say all that, I'm like, maybe it's just a little makeup for back in the day. But he can do it, you know, as well as anybody else. And I admired, he was, you know, someone I admired a lot creatively and artistically, him and Joker respectively, because they were kind of like the two partners in crime that were split apart. But fortunately I had access to both of them. But just to see the process behind it, and you know, the theory behind the artwork, and then just to be able to like do it on a whim, I was like, I can't do that. What you know, I felt intimidated. You know,
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. You know, coming out of the box, 20 years. Yeah,
It's a little more than 20 years.
A little bit more. 20. Let's call it 23 years. 24 years.
Might actually be a little. I think the last piece I did was in summer, maybe summer of '93, maybe '92.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
That's even longer. That's
Yeah.
just like, you know, 27 years. Or
Yeah,
something
'93.
Like that.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
That's a long time. That's literally like almost as long as I've been writing. You know, like the whole, like you stopped, I started. You know, essentially. You know, in that time frame. But to see you do that, you know what I'm saying, like, and just, you know, flex. You know what I'm saying, like I knew when you did the first line, I was like, oh, this is gonna be fine. You know what I'm saying? Like, not that I was worried about it. I'm never
Not
worried
me.
about it. You know, but when you did the first line, I was like, oh, he's got this, because the very first thing you did was like an 18-foot tall like Philly style tag like on the wall.
was
So
fun.
I was like, wow, okay, this is where this is going. And same with Randy. Like you took that can and you did that first line. I was like, okay, this is you got this. You know what I'm saying? Like I was backing off. And I've messed up enough graffiti in my life to know, you know what I'm saying? Like it's not, inherently easy. Like if you haven't been practicing or whatever, just to get back in the swing of things and get into the groove, it might take a little bit of time. So, that's why the offer is always open. Whenever you want to paint, you want to come, let me know. I got a spot. Same for you. Same for you. You know what I'm saying? You guys are my OGs, and I really, really do appreciate you guys spending the time with us tonight to talk about your experiences. I want to thank everybody at home who joined us for this Humanities Council Humanatini. Thank you, Humanities Council, for looking out for us. You can check us out very, very soon in MLK Library. Springtime, we're going to be doing our exhibition Aerosol Murals for Our Time, where you'll probably see some of these artists again talking about some of their experiences creating some of the very first graffiti murals in Washington, D.C. Until then, you can always come down to the 14th Street Graffiti Museum every day from 11 o'clock to 4:30 p.m. Those are our winter hours. You can come and check out the work that the artists have done in the space. You can check us out at 14thstreetgraffitimuseum.com. You can actually buy one of these really cool hoodies and support the museum, okay? And with that, I just want to say thank you guys. You know what I'm saying? Thank you for coming, spending your time, and just sharing your experience with us.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Shout out.
Yeah. If you guys got shout-outs?
Shout out, yes, to Ja, to Fame, to Shell, to Vice.
Yeah.
Everybody else that helped make this place
That's right.
fresh.
Shout out to Mouse,
to all the new
Kier.
writers coming up. Keep doing it, and be as original as you can. There's enough carbon copies out there.
Absolutely.
Be you.
Shout out to Dan. Shout out to Roger Gassman.
Hey, there you go. There you go. And
Thanks for the books, Roger.
Right?
Roger sent me plenty of books.
I love that.
I'm
I love
looking
getting
out.
care packages from Roger.
And Roger looked out while I was away.
Yeah.
Roger
That's
looked
great.
out.
Yeah,
That's-
he laid a really good foundation for that. Very respectful.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Very
Absolutely.
respectful.
You got shout-outs?
My wife Karen.
Shout out, Karen.
My kids. One of them happens to be over there, but he's more of a man child than a kid. Shout out to my God and Creator, who inspires me and challenges me, and all the guys I used to paint with, from my cousin SMK, who did everything at once, and talk about being effortlessly, to this young fella, which I've already complimented him on tape here, to Remmer, Mock, Joker, Sat up in Philly, Semet up in Philly, Espo, who's just up and down the East Coast, Billy Wimsat, everyone I've mentioned. I'm sure there's people that I've left off who will be offended. I'll paint with you as a
Yes.
as a counterbalance.
Yes. All of you come to DC. I got walls. So,
Absolute pleasure to meet Ari Randy. I do believe that Rare Essence owes him
Oh, yeah.
a little bit of thanks
Oh, they
and
do.
some residuals for
They
extra
do.
records
Oh, they do.
that they sold. There's no way, because I was like, yo, is he in the band?
That's what everybody think.
Like, is he, like, what is this? Like, dude is everywhere.
excellent.
So,
Excellent. Well, a couple shout outs from this side. 2180 Productions running on the live stream. Shout out. Nick Moreland over here holding down the live stream and the sound. Yeah. Eddie Harris here with us. All right. And Gabriella Masi from Uptown Main Street. And with that, we are, I'm sorry, my OG SMK is right here also. I want to make sure I give him a salute. Everybody, thank you for checking and tuning in, and we'll hit you sometime soon with another live stream. Thank you.
Shout out to Officer Paul.